Hello, and welcome to another episode of Steven Goes to the Movies. I'm filming from my office today because I went and saw a movie that I did my normal in-the-car take on it, and I wasn't really happy with how it all came out because this movie was kind of hard to unpack. So I'll start with, this is episode 20, so it was fitting that I went and saw the movie 2.0, which is an Indian production. It was actually the most expensive Indian movie ever made to date, and the 9th most expensive non-American produced movie ever made to date. Because I have AMC Stubs A-List, I only can see 3 movies a week. So the Bollywood films haven't gotten as much coverage as they would have, like when I used to have Movie Pass and I was seeing a movie almost every day. I was able to see a lot more foreign films and so forth. So this movie, it's interesting. It starts off with some dialogue, with a blank screen with some text, and it says no birds or animals were harmed in the making of this movie. I'm like, okay, that's a good way to start. I wonder what's to come. Then the next at least 5 minutes of the movie was dedicated to telling us who produced the movie and edited and directed it and so forth, with the most intricate and lavish display of effects that I'm pretty sure was like half of the movie's budget, just right there. And then the first actual scene of the movie was a man killing himself. Okay, well there you go. Welcome to the movie, everybody. This was a sequel of sorts. It's considered a standalone sequel. There was a movie that came out in 2010, which was about a scientist who creates a robot and loses control of it, and yada yada. This movie, and I didn't know that going in, but this movie is the continuation of that line of storytelling. Because the next scene, we have a group of college students who are going to interview this scientist, this engineer character who we haven't met. And one of the first things they say to him is they ask him a question about something else, about another character who we don't know, called Chiti. And then they even show, like, he's got like a big picture of him, and they're like arm in arm on the wall. And I was like, okay, this must be a sequel, because there's no reason they would introduce a character by name like that if they didn't expect the audience to know who he was. The product placement throughout this movie was heavy, which I understand given that it was the most expensive Indian production ever. I'm sure they needed to cover some costs however they could, because within that scene where the students are with the scientist, a robot comes over, and so it was 3D as well. Out of the robot comes a can of Coca-Cola right to the screen. Then a little bit later, we see some close-up shots of a cell phone, and it says Samsung across it. And then near the end of the movie, they're in a soccer stadium, and we see the Honda logo center screen, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Got a real nice close-up, and at the 3rd time, I was like, really? It's just one of those things. But yeah, so this movie is billed as science fiction, but it veers hard off track at one point and becomes drama. I don't want to spoil too much, but the whole thing is they go through like a bunch of shots as different people are doing things with their phones, and then all of a sudden the phone like flies out of their hand, comes to life and flies out of their hand, and then they go to another person doing something and their phone flies out of their hand, and this goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on for a little while of the movie, where we're just seeing how all these different people are using their phones, and they don't have them anymore. the movie has an interesting way of showing like how we abuse technology and how it's kind of overrun our lives, and how we become numb to things in the real world because of technology. Like one of the scenes where a phone flies out of a hand is of a guy taking a picture with his dead grandfather. It's the funeral, and he's doing a sad face selfie where he even repositions his grandfather's head to make so it's more in the camera, and he's like for the picture. We see a scene where there's like a mob of people trying to go to the police to like, I want my phone back, and you have like little chats that like kind of pan as the camera pans, you hear some of it, and you got one girl going, life is just not worth living if I don't have my Instagram and Snapchat feeds, you know. And then there's an older man who's like, oh, it's been really nice actually, you know, not having my phone again. Just like the old days, I've got my head up and I'm looking at the world. And there's just all these kind of little things that are added in there. But anyway, so we kind of find out that these phones have come alive in a sense. They're being controlled by something, and it's killing people in very gruesome ways, like Saw level horror almost. I don't want to spoil it, but it's definitely those scenes. If you don't want to see the movie, those scenes are definitely worth looking up online just to see how they did that. Because whoa, it was whoa. That's all I can say about that. We have this scientist character who's part of like this panel of experts trying to figure out how do we protect the people from this thing that's now killing. And he's saying, I need to reactivate my robot, which is clue number 2 that there was another movie. And then some other guy's like, no, your robot killed my father. So he will now never let that happen. I'm like, oh. And they say, let's call in the military. And so they call the military. But then the military is completely useless against this entity. And so then he gets approval to activate his robot. The special effects, when it came to like the phones and like how that all happened, that was some pretty cool stuff. You have phones mimicking environments and then like turning into like things, and that was all done really well. But then this robot the digital effects were pretty cringe. The last movie came out in 2010. I think I mentioned that, and the production started on it in 2008. And that was after, apparently, according to Wikipedia, 10 years of attempts at getting the first movie funded. So over all that time, the main actor who reprises his role, he's aged a lot. But it's him, and then the robot was also him. So we got him, he's older now, and the robot is supposed to look as young as ever. So they did a lot of like, de-aging kind of stuff, whether it was makeup and digital effects and etc. But there were scenes where like this robot is like running, and he's almost like shuffling his feet in a way where you're like, I'm like, that just, I mean, he's running up a building, but he looks like he, should be like performing the shuffle, on a dance floor. So that stuff was kind of strange. And then as the movie went on, the graphics got weirder when it came to the robot characters. The whole thing with the cell phones, like I don't want to ruin any of that stuff, but the effects on the cell phone stuff stayed pretty cool, but all the robot stuff got really weird and Willy Wonka-ish. We end up with like thousands of these robots, and then there's miniature robots, and they combine themselves and they become magnetized, and there's all this random shit, and you're like, how the hell, So anyway, so we're about over an hour in the movie, and then it goes hard drama, like complete, like hard into the drama in a way that was like, whoa, what, am I watching the same movie? We follow this one character as we learn about his life and how he loved birds, and all this stuff. There were some beautiful sweeping shots of like flocks of birds, and the music was lovely in this whole thing. And then, you know, we go through this whole thing where he's a professor of avionics, I don't know, whatever the term is for birds, ornithology or something. And he notices how the cell towers are just, you know, are harming birds' ability to fly north and south for the winter and summer and all that stuff, and birds are dying. And the more years that went by, the worse it got, because now their cell phones are more popular, and there's more cell towers, and then his neighbor ends up selling his land to let them build a cell tower. So now this guy whose home was like a sanctuary for birds, now all his birds are slowly dying, and he buries them. And by the end of the scene, you see his entire backyard is just little mounds, little graves for all of the birds that he had been taking care of, because they all died. So then now, spoiler alert, this is the man that hangs himself in the beginning of the movie. Then we cut back into the present, and now there's fighting again, and the rest of the movie is nonsensical violence and mayhem, and like almost like Power Rangers level effects, where you got like the Power Rangers movie from when I was a kid, when we have like these two big mechs like fighting each other. And like I said, the robot characters are going like doing like they turn into a big ball, and they're rolling around, and there's like, you know, and then they become a magnet thing, and there's like all this stuff, and I was just like, it's too much. And then what was weird was that then we have like little robots who then basically stop the bad guy from doing the thing by threatening to kill a bunch of birds, we will snap these birds' necks. They're riding the birds because they're miniature robots, and then they actually grab the birds by the heads and kind of twist a little bit to like that they're not joking, that they're gonna kill these birds if he doesn't stop what he's doing. And it was like, who am I rooting for? Because, you know, the scientist guy is a good guy, but now the robots are, I mean, they're protecting human life by threatening animal life, and I guess ends justify means or something. It was just like a weird, like, you know, I guess I'm rooting for the good guys, even though they're acting like the bad guys to stop the bad guy, who's really kind of a good guy, but doing things in a bad way. So it was all kind of twisted up like that. And then we get to the conclusion of the movie, and, you know, there's a line in there from the main scientist guy about how we need to do better for the planet. It was weird. It was like almost kind of tone deaf, because he says how we need to try to do more for the animals, and where our use of cell phones shouldn't affect anything else on this planet. And then his next line was, or at the very least, we should put water out for birds when it's hot in the summer. I was like, what? What? How do we go from the radio towers and the cell phone stuff to water for bird? I don't know. So yeah, and then what I hadn't realized up until this point of the movie, the end of the movie, was that there wasn't a dance number in the movie. And I realized that because the end of the movie during the credits was a dance number. Those sons of bitches. I was like, oh man, we almost got through a movie without it, and then nope, we gotta add the nonsensical dance song and dance number with the crazy costumes. So would I recommend this movie? I don't know. You know, I think that this was a very heavily India targeted movie, because one thing that I did learn during it was how, like, in the US we have 4 major cell providers, like that there are other smaller ones, but they pay the big ones to use their cell towers. In China there's 3 providers, but in India there's over 10 companies that are putting up their own cell towers, to try to compete with each other. And from what I gather in the movie, whether it's true or not, it seems like they might be boosting up their own signals and increasing the power possibly beyond the regulatory standards and what's allowed to get a leg up on the competition, because if their tower works, if their service works in my bathroom, I'll probably switch to them rather than the company I've been with, which doesn't work in my bathroom. And the increased power and the more radiation in the air is probably harming a lot of birds in India, which is just it seems crazy. And the reason that the neighbor had to sell his land was because he was a farmer, and he said that he was spending too much on pesticide, which the professor explained, well, that's because they're killing the birds who eat the bugs. That's why you need to buy pesticide, and now you can't afford the land, so you're selling it so that they can put up a tower which kills more birds. But I just don't know, if you just want to see like a sci-fi action flick, you're gonna hate the middle of this movie. And if you want to see a movie about respecting the planet and taking care of our birds and all that kind of stuff, then you're probably not going to be so interested in the beginning and the end, especially the end with like wanton destruction and all that kind of stuff. But so I just don't know who this movie is really for. I feel like what it probably did was suck in a lot of people, like, you should come see this movie, look at all this action, and then here's a message you need to hear, and they're already stuck in the movie and they're watching this. I wonder how many people will really get affected by it. They even said in the movie, the villain character even says at one point, they reshare and like it online, and then go back to their habits, 5 seconds later after they've done their one good deed for the day. So, I mean, how long is a message going to really resonate with the public? I'm not sure. If you've seen the movie, let me know. If you haven't seen it and you don't, you're thinking about it, you don't want to see it, let's have a conversation. And don't forget to please like and subscribe and click the bell if you so choose. And have a wonderful night.